It goes without saying that everyone knows who George Washington was. He was the fellow who allegedly chopped down the cherry tree, even though I think that's not true. I think that's made up. But we know he was a general in the Independence War. We know of his crossing of the Delaware, immortalized in oil. We know he was the first president of the United States, and we know his job. George Washington's job was to be a politician. Although everyone knows who George Washington was, I wonder how many of us know who his contemporary, Anthony Benezet, was. I suspect not many. Anthony Benezet taught Quaker children in Philadelphia, and in the evenings, he taught slave children. Anthony was an abolitionist who, unlike many other abolitionists, actually worked with slaves. When he retired from teaching in his Quaker school, he began the first public school in the United States for girls. His biographers tell us that Anthony Benezet was a funny-looking little man who could not use his stature or his appearance to make his difficult job any easier. And what was his job? Anthony Benezet was a prophet. We know many politicians. We know that politicians make deals. We know that they are skilled in the art of compromise. We know that politicians enact laws, and if they do a good job, they get elected. But we don't know many prophets. We don't know people who are 100% faithful to an ideal, who can't be bought, who break laws that are unjust, and if they do a good job, they get murdered. Today's liturgy of the Word gives us 3 prophets and a deeper look at the role of a prophet. The first was Moses, the first and the greatest of all the prophets. His job was to confess one God in a polytheistic world. He was the mediator between God and the people of God. Our second is Paul in today's reading to the Corinthians. His letter was not written to answer questions about lifestyle. No, his letter was meant to be prophetic, not about restrictions. He wasn't telling us that the single life is better than the married life. No, what he was doing was telling us that nothing should interfere with the new life that we have in Jesus Christ. Or maybe better, our new life in Jesus Christ should interfere with everything. He too, like Moses before him, was a prophet. And then we have Jesus in the gospel, a prophet like Moses. Jesus' words and deeds are God's words and deeds. And he taught with such authority that even an unclean spirit praised him. He teaches with such authority that he shocks people who were used to the teachings of the scribes, who were, by the way, politicians. I want you to know that I like to read. And I like the writings of an author named Gary Wills. Not all of them, but most of them. What you need to know about Dr. Wills is that he's a professor of culture and history at Northwest University. He's the author of volume upon volume of political autobiographies. George Washington, Richard Nixon, the Kennedys, Ronald Reagan. He wrote about all of them. But what you also need to know about Gary Wills is that he is a devout Roman Catholic who also writes about religion in the United States. His most recent publication is called The Rosary. My favorite is one entitled Jesuits in Disarray. And his most recent piece is called Papal Sins. I just read it. It was much shorter than I thought it would be. I tell you all of this because Wills has an exquisite definition of a prophet. And he says this: a prophet is the one who stands against the dominant culture and tries to evoke an alternative consciousness, a person whose words and deeds convey the presence and the intentions of God. If he's right, I think that we are surrounded by prophets. People like Father Joseph Bizinet and Sister Karen Klimzak, who literally laid down their lives for the poor that they serve. People like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who dared to dream about the end of the mortal sins called racism and white supremacy. I think that poet Amanda Gorman is a prophet when she, in the dark shadow of January 6th, spoke truth to power on January 21st. And I also think that you are a prophet. You are a prophet when other kids mock a classmate mercilessly, but you won't. You are a prophet when everyone in the university is plagiarizing, but you decline. You are a prophet when the group laughs at a racist or a sexist joke, and you refuse. You are a prophet when the board of directors sheepishly accepts the status quo, but you speak up. You are a prophet when your colleagues use "it's just business" to justify some cutthroat decision, but you reject it. And you are a prophet when your family wants to fight fire with fire, but you want to fight fire with compassion. Brothers and sisters, I think that you are a prophet when you stand against the dominant culture and try to evoke an alternative consciousness, and when your words and your deeds convey the presence and the intentions of God. Let us join in that long line of prophets who have come before us to show the way. Let us pray for the coming of more prophets.